In a collapsing timeline where the human mind is the last frontier of survival, one truth stands above all others. A person can rebuild their identity from the quantum level up. This audiobook declares, without hesitation, that the listener is entering a future-built blueprint, an operating manual stolen from civilizations thousands of years ahead. In this moment, their outdated patterns, obsolete reactions, and expired self-concepts lose authority. From this point forward, the protocol takes command. The reconstruction begins now. There is no turning back. The quantum mind rebuild is already in progress.
Chapter 1. Chapter 1. Command the collapse of your old identity. The chronosphere pulsed around him, soft at first, then rising in a steady, almost ceremonial hum. Arien stood at the center of the convergence chamber, the air rippling with the static of timelines brushing against one another. Every surface shimmered with shifting fractals, each one a possible version of himself. Versions he had lived, versions he had lost, versions he had abandoned before they could abandon him. The chamber always whispered the same phrase before the protocol began, as if it were aware of its own purpose. Collapse it now. Arien exhaled, watching his breath distort into crystalline patterns. He'd learned long ago that the chamber read everything: fear, hesitation, memory, and amplified it. The city above was unaware of this hidden place buried beneath the outer rings. They believed identity was fixed, that a person could only become what time allowed. But those beliefs belonged to civilizations centuries behind the truth. In the deep future, the worlds beyond the Helion belt had already discarded the illusion of a single self. Their starships were designed to deconstruct obsolete programming, peeling away old mission logs the same way their people shed expired mindsets. An outdated emotional reflex, fear, jealousy, shame, was treated like faulty code. The solution? Collapse it, purge it, replace it. Keep only what served the mission ahead. Arien stepped forward, the floor recalibrated beneath him, luminous rings scanning his neural pathways. The voice returned, calmer now, almost coaxing. Collapse it now. He remembered the first time he heard the phrase. He was 12, lost in the abandoned data vaults, fingers scanning obsolete memory wafers engraved with the histories of forgotten timelines. Those wafers had shown him something Earth was never meant to see. Humans who learned to shape identity like metal, forging it, melting it, remaking it. And he had felt it even then. The world he lived in was slow, too slow, heavy with outdated patterns designed to restrict who he could become. The chamber lights intensified, projecting silhouettes of every version of Arien that still lingered within his neural field: the fearful child, the impulsive adolescent, the silent observer who watched life instead of living it. They all flickered around him in spiraling formations, pale echoes of identities that had run their course. Some reached for him, others turned away. All of them, in some way, still controlled him. You cannot proceed while they remain, the chamber murmured. Command the collapse of the legacy operating system. Legacy operating system. That's what humans called identity before the collapse wars reshaped the distant sectors. Arien's mind replayed brief glimpses of those timeline fragments, cities built on floating lattices, citizens with minds capable of dissolving unwanted thought patterns in seconds, societies that treated identity like a navigational tool, not a prison. He steadied his breath. This was the moment he had prepared for, the moment the chapter demanded. He raised his hand toward the swirling illusions of his former selves. They wavered, sensing the shift in his intention. The air thickened as old reflexes fought to remain intact, reflexes built from fear, inherited guilt, ancestral exhaustion. They clung to him like vines. Arien's voice, low and commanding, vibrated through the chamber. "Collapse it, now." The illusions trembled, then fractured. A rush of heat surged across his body. His heartbeat synchronized with the chamber's pulse. Every outdated thought pattern detached from his neural field, dissolving into threads of silver light. He watched, equal parts sorrow and relief, as entire chapters of who he had been disassembled themselves like the hull of a decommissioned starship, not destroyed, just released. A soft crackle echoed above him as the chamber sealed the collapse sequence. The walls shifted, revealing a new pattern etched into the air. A symbol he had seen recurring in dreams, an angular loop, looping back into itself. A reminder that identity could be rebuilt endlessly. He felt lighter, not in body, but in destiny. The chamber dimmed. A final whisper, soft but unmistakable, brushed against his ear. The legacy has been collapsed. The protocol can now begin. Arien stepped into the corridor beyond, the floor glowing with a path he had never walked before. Behind him, the chamber sealed shut, ensuring the past could not follow. And as he moved forward, a single question echoed through the silence.
Chapter 2.
Chapter 2. Rewrite the neural code time tried to give you. The corridor beyond the convergence chamber narrowed into a long metallic spine, each wall lined with pulsating threads of blue light. Arien walked slowly, palms grazing the cool surface, feeling the faint tremor of energy patterns racing beneath the alloy. It reminded him of synapses firing inside a giant machine mind. And, in a way, that was exactly what the neural recalibration wing was, a mechanized model of the human brain, stretched into architecture. Somewhere deep within the corridor, a soft clicking sound repeated in intervals, mechanical, rhythmic, precise. A reminder of the protocol's next demand. A reminder he could not outrun. Rewrite what time wrote for you. The phrase drifted through his mind like an echo from a forgotten timeline. It had followed him since childhood, long before he understood its meaning. Back then, it felt like a riddle. Now he understood it was an instruction, a directive, a challenge. Time had written thousands of tiny scripts into his brain, scripts inherited from parents who lived in fear of collapse, grandparents who survived famine, ancestors who carried the weight of old wars. All those struggles lived within him as reflexes and impulses, shaping thoughts he never consciously chose. The scientists of the future called them temporal bias scripts. Neuropatterns encoded by survival mode eras, outdated but persistent. The corridor opened into a vast circular hall with an obsidian dome overhead. Holographic veins streaked across the ceiling, mapping neural pathways from countless eras. Each pathway flickered with images, memories not his, faces he had never met, environments from timelines Earth had forgotten. Arien stepped toward the center, where a crystalline pedestal rose from the floor. Blue mist swirled around its base, forming the symbol he had seen in the convergence chamber, an angular loop folding into itself. A voice resonated from the dome, layered and calm. Temporal bias scripts detected, preparing neural overwrite interface. He inhaled deeply. The hall's temperature shifted. cooling as the mist condensed into thin, ribbon-like projections. They circled him, tracing patterns around his body. The air buzzed, like static building before lightning. Arien closed his eyes. The moment he did, the visions began. He saw flashes of people he never met, workers from the quantum mines, children born under flickering neon skylines, refugees from the collapse wars. They carried fear like armor, bracing for threats that no longer existed. Each memory pressed into him, heavy and uninvited, like ancient software forcing itself onto a new device. The dome spoke again. These scripts have directed your reactions, shaped your emotions, governed your identity. These scripts belong to time, not to you. Arien's heartbeat accelerated. He could feel the truth vibrating through his bones. How many choices had he made that weren't really his? How many thoughts echoed the voices of people gone centuries before he lived? A single command surfaced from the depths of the chamber's consciousness, sharp, clear. Rewrite what time wrote for you. The ribbons of light tightened their orbit, scanning his neural field. Each time they passed, he felt a memory loosen its grip, the fear of speaking, the hesitation to act, the instinct to shrink in the presence of authority. These were not his traits. They were borrowed, inherited, imposed. He whispered, voice trembling, "Rewrite what time wrote for me." The hall responded instantly. The dome erupted in cascading patterns of bioluminescent code. Lines of light plunged downward, flowing through the ribbons and into his mind. Arien gasped as a surge of clarity rushed through him, a clarity that felt like the first breath after nearly drowning. He saw his life without the inherited scripts, a mind unburdened, a self untethered, a future no longer dictated by past eras. Yet the process was not painless. Memories resisted deletion, clinging to him like vines refusing to die. He saw his mother's warnings, his father's silence, the generational shadows that shaped the smallest parts of him, all of them pulling back, fighting for control. The dome's voice deepened. Time does not release its scripts without a struggle. Persist. Arien steadied himself. He raised his head. His voice rose with renewed strength. Rewrite what time wrote for me. The hall obeyed. The residual memories shattered like glass, dissolving into radiant dust. The ribbons dimmed, drifting away until only silence remained. The weight inside Arien lifted, subtle at first, then overwhelming. For the first time, the thoughts in his mind felt like his own. The holographic pathways above shifted, reconfiguring themselves into a new pattern that aligned perfectly with the symbol on the floor. A future-built identity, a self authored by intention, not inheritance. As the hall lights dimmed, a final whisper echoed from the dome. The scripts of time have been rewritten. Proceed to the next threshold. Arien looked toward the darkened exit ahead. His pulse steadied, his mind sharpened. But deep inside, a new question stirred. If his old identity wasn't his, what else had time stolen from him? A thin line of light appeared under the exit door. It flickered. It waited. And Arien stepped forward.
Chapter 3 Chapter 3 Insert future intelligence into present behavior. The exit door slid open with a low hydraulic sigh, revealing a long descent spiraling into pale blue darkness. Arien hesitated at the threshold, sensing the air shift around him, colder, sharper, humming with distant machinery. He knew this part of the protocol, the simulatrix, the chamber where future intelligence was forged, borrowed, and installed. A single strip of luminescent markers guided him downward. As he descended, he noticed something unsettling. Each step echoed differently. Some thuds were heavy, some hollow, some didn't echo at all. It was as if the hallway existed in multiple states at once, or as if portions of it belonged to futures not yet formed. It reminded him of the phrase the archivists used when describing these chambers. Act from the intelligence of tomorrow, not the memory of yesterday. The descending spiral ended abruptly in a circular chamber suspended over a vast abyss. A soft wind rose from below, whispering through the metal grates like 1,000 distant voices speaking in unison. The platform vibrated gently, adjusting to his presence. Hovering over the chamber was a colossal sphere of translucent alloy, rotating slowly. Inside, images flickered, flashes of cities built on clouds of antimatter, luminous beings evolving inside lattice-like cocoons, humans walking through gravity-bent halls shaped by pure intent, moments from timelines centuries ahead. Arien stepped toward the sphere. Immediately, thin strands of light unfurled from its surface, drifting toward him like cautious serpents. They circled him, forming a soft cocoon of scanning light. The chamber spoke with a layered resonance. Future state intelligence patterns ready for extraction, initiating simulation interface. Arien felt a subtle pull behind his eyes, a sensation like gravity being redirected. The chamber was synchronizing with him, aligning his neural field with the future projections stored within the sphere. It was said that advanced civilizations ran thousands of simulations of their future selves, refining habits, reactions, and choices long before they faced them. They didn't predict the future, they practiced it. The strands of light constricted, and suddenly, he was somewhere else. A cityscape stretched before him, floating above a glowing ocean of plasma. Towering structures arched across the sky like metallic ribs, shifting shape in real time to accommodate the flow of traffic and energy. The air shimmered with fractal glyphs, symbols identical to the angular loop he had seen earlier. People moved with deliberate precision, their gestures fluid, their decisions sharp. There was no hesitation, no wasted thought. Every action seemed like it had been mastered centuries earlier. Arien realized this was not a place. This was a version of him. His future self walked toward him, a taller, calmer presence with silver-threaded eyes that reflected timelines. There was no fear in that gaze, no old reflexes, just clarity. The future self spoke, voice echoing like it traveled across dimensions. You are acting from the memory of yesterday. Start acting from the intelligence of tomorrow. Arien felt the words vibrate like a tuning fork inside his chest. The future self raised a hand, and suddenly Arien could see it all. Micro-decisions made with precision, breath regulated for optimal clarity, emotions processed with engineered ease, reactions executed with calculated purpose. Every behavior was an upgrade. The future self placed a palm against Arien's chest. A warm surge of data flooded through him. Patterns, instincts, responses not yet learned. He gasped as the knowledge embedded itself into his neural field, rearranging itself with the efficiency of a high-tech software installation. Act from the intelligence of tomorrow, not the memory of yesterday. The phrase repeated in waves, synchronizing with his heartbeat. The vision fractured into shards of light, pulling him back into the chamber. The strands retracted. The sphere dimmed. Arien stumbled, steadying himself. The chamber's voice returned, softer now. Simulation complete. Future state intelligence successfully integrated. He felt different. He felt aligned. But something else lingered, a faint echo from the future self, a message he wasn't ready to decode. A warning? A clue? A timeline hint? Arien stepped back toward the exit. The chamber lights flickered, projecting the angular loop symbol again, its lines now glowing brighter, as if acknowledging the successful integration. He whispered the phrase to himself, letting it settle into his bones. Act from the intelligence of tomorrow, not the memory of yesterday. A metallic clang echoed from somewhere deep within the structure, sharp, urgent, unmistakable, the sound of something shifting, something waking. Arien froze. A second clang followed, then a low mechanical growl. The simulatrix had given him the intelligence he sought, but it had also awakened something else, and it was getting closer.
Chapter 4.
Chapter 4. Break the timeline that keeps you small. The mechanical growl followed Arien as he exited the simulatrix, trailing him like the echo of an unwanted memory. He stepped into a narrow transit bridge suspended above a yawning void of shifting lights, timelines bending and unbending in slow motion far below. The bridge vibrated underfoot as if it were alive, adjusting to fluctuations in the temporal field. He knew where he was headed. The protocol's next threshold, the Riftwalk deck. A place forbidden to anyone who had not undergone the preliminary collapses. The air along the bridge shimmered with golden dust, particles of fractured timelines drifting from ruptures in reality. They coiled around his skin like threads trying to weave themselves into him. The chamber whispered a reminder from earlier chapters, a low mantra threading through his mind. Break the timeline, build the new one, repeat. Arien gripped the rail, grounding himself as the shimmering particles intensified. He had read about restrictive timelines, those invisible branches of existence created not by laws of physics, but by fear, memory, and emotional inertia. A person could live their entire life inside one, never realizing they were trapped in the smallest possible version of themselves. And now the bridge pulsed with the weight of every timeline he had not lived. When he stepped off the bridge, the world reshaped itself into a vast, circular arena of black glass. Above him stretched a dome of swirling constellations, each one a living map of alternate outcomes. Some stars flickered weakly, possible futures fading. Others flared with impossible brightness, timelines too powerful yet too dangerous to approach. At the center stood an obsidian monolith, etched with the same angular loop symbol that had haunted him since Chapter 1. But now another symbol glowed beneath it, sharper, fractured, resembling a broken circle. The symbol of rupture. A soft voice emerged from the monolith, layered in frequencies that felt both ancient and impossibly advanced. Restrictive timelines detected, preparing rupture interface. Arien's pulse quickened. He stepped forward, drawn by the magnetic pull of unfinished destinies. The monolith projected 3 ghostly silhouettes of Arien from different restrictive timelines. One looked exhausted, shoulders slumped from years of self-doubt. Another stared with a hollow intensity shaped by fear of failure. The third looked small, almost fragile, built of hesitation so old that it had fossilized. Each timeline felt familiar, too familiar. The voice deepened. These are timelines created by limitations, inherited beliefs, and collapsed opportunities. They anchor you to the smallest version of yourself. Arien swallowed hard. He felt those versions staring into him, pleading not to be erased.
Restrictive timelines did not die quietly. They fought. A low hum vibrated through the arena as lines of light stitched themselves between Arien and each silhouette, a tether connecting him to destinies he had unconsciously chosen. His breath trembled. "Break the timeline," he whispered, barely audible. The monolith responded instantly. The ground cracked, jagged fissures glowing beneath the silhouettes. Arien stepped toward the first one, the exhausted version of himself. The tether pulsed. He felt its weight, the long nights of overthinking, the unspoken resentments, the internal voice that said he was never enough. The monolith whispered, "Break the timeline, build the new one, repeat." Arien clenched his fist and swung downward, the arena amplifying his intent into a wave of temporal force. The silhouette shattered into a cloud of light, dissolving into the fissures below. He staggered, knees trembling. It felt like tearing out a part of his own history. He approached the second silhouette, the fearful one. This timeline pulsed harder, resisting more violently. Memories surged into him. Opportunities declined, dreams abandoned, paths not taken. He raised his hand again, but this time the silhouette lunged toward him, trying to merge back into his neural field. Arien shouted, voice echoing across universes, "Break the timeline." A shockwave erupted from his chest. The silhouette cracked, splintered, erupted into white dust. Only one silhouette remained, the fragile one, the one that had shaped all the others. Arien approached slowly. This version didn't resist. It simply stared at him with hollow eyes, as if waiting to be released. He whispered the mantra again, soft but certain. "Break the timeline. Build the new one. Repeat." The ground opened beneath the silhouette, drawing it downward into a pool of light. It disappeared without a sound. Silence fell over the arena. The tethers dissolved. The constellations above realigned. The monolith pulsed with approval. Restrictive timelines severed. Identity field liberated. Proceed to observer activation. Arien stepped toward the exit as the arena dimmed, but just before reaching it, he noticed something else. A new silhouette had appeared on the distant edge of the arena. Not a restrictive timeline, something else. It watched him. It waited, and unlike the others, it smiled.
Chapter 5. Chapter 5. Activate the quantum observer within you. Arien froze at the edge of the arena, eyes locked on the distant silhouette that hadn't been there moments ago. Unlike the restrictive timelines he had severed, this figure wasn't fading or flickering. It stood with perfect stillness, too solid, too intentional. And that faint smile carved across its face sent a chill through him. The moment Arien blinked, the silhouette vanished. A soft wind swept through the arena, carrying with it a faint whisper, almost inaudible, almost imagined. "In observation is power." He shuddered. The voice wasn't the monolith's. It wasn't the chambers. It was something else. He stepped into the exit corridor, a narrow pathway illuminated by shifting plates of light. The walls trembled with a low hum, as if the structure itself were breathing. He could feel the next phase of the protocol calling to him, pressing into his thoughts like a gravitational pull. He followed the path into a chamber shaped like an enormous sphere carved from black stone. Floating panels circled the room like orbiting satellites, reflecting dozens of versions of him, some clear, others warped, some delayed by a few seconds as though trapped in residual fragments of time. A subtle vibration tickled the back of his skull. The chamber lit up, lines of light racing across the floor to form an intricate sigil,
An expanded version of the angular loop symbol, but now with a small luminous dot at its center. The dot pulsed softly. A voice descended from above, calm and resonant. Initiating quantum observer activation, preparing consciousness lift. Arien stepped onto the central platform. The moment his foot touched it, every reflection of himself froze mid-motion, except one. One reflection stepped out of sync, moving, while the others remained suspended. It looked directly at him, eyes bright, posture unburdened by fear or expectation. The voice spoke again, almost gently. The quantum observer is your vantage point beyond fear, beyond ego, beyond inherited constraints. It is the self that watches without reacting. The floating panels tilted inward. The reflections shifted, some showing him as he was, others showing him as he might become, confident, detached, omniscient. A few reflected older versions of him, shaped by panic, insecurity, and pain. But only the out-of-sync reflection, the luminous one, continued to move. The chamber dimmed to near darkness. Only the glowing dot and the luminous reflection remained visible. Arien felt his heartbeat slow. The room vibrated with a rhythmic pulse. In observation is power. Observation rewrites fate. He had heard the phrase before, whispers in ancient data vaults, etched into forgotten star maps, embedded in the simulation sequences from Chapter 3. But now it resonated differently, as though spoken directly into the architecture of his mind. The luminous reflection raised its hand. Arien mirrored the gesture without thinking. Immediately, a ring of light expanded from his chest, passing through the room, the panels, the reflections, collapsing all of them into raw energy. The chamber felt weightless, as if stripped of physical form. Suddenly, he could see everything at once, his thoughts and the awareness observing those thoughts, his emotions and the vantage point standing above them. It was like stepping outside himself and seeing his mind from orbit. The voice whispered, "The observer is the one who sees the storm but does not become it." Another surge of clarity spread through him. He saw memories he had once drowned in, now held at arm's length, powerless. He saw fears that had defined him, now dwarfed by the vantage point watching them. He saw impulses that once controlled him, now exposed as simple reflexes. Arien inhaled deeply, and for the first time he felt no pull from past identities, no hesitation from future uncertainties. Only presence, sharp and crystalline. In observation is power. Observation rewrites fate. The luminous reflection stepped closer. It reached toward Arien's forehead, not touching, but hovering centimeters away. A vibrating hum filled the chamber. Arien felt the last barrier between his identity and his observer self thin, then dissolve entirely. It felt like stepping through a membrane of light. His mind expanded. The chamber expanded. Reality expanded. For a moment, just a moment, he saw the entire timeline structure. Every branch, every possibility, every version of himself, including the silhouette that had smiled at him. And there it was again, hidden in the far reaches of the temporal lattice, still watching, still waiting. Arien snapped back as the chamber lights flared. The voice concluded. Quantum observer activated, consciousness stabilized. Prepare for trait upload. Arien stepped toward the exit, mind sharpened, breath steady. But he couldn't shake the final image. The smiling silhouette, wasn't gone. It was moving closer.
Chapter 6.
Chapter 6. Upload the traits your future self has already mastered. Arien stepped out of the observer chamber with a mind clearer than it had ever been. But clarity brought a new kind of awareness. Sharp, unfiltered, unblinking. Every sound carried meaning. Every shift in the air felt intentional. And somewhere behind him, slipping through timelines like a shadow through water, he sensed that smiling silhouette. Watching. Waiting. He moved quickly down the illuminated corridor, past walls lined with holographic diagrams of neural pathways and temporal grids. The light panels shifted as he passed, displaying strange glyphs that resembled synaptic sparks arranged into impossible geometric patterns. The message was unmistakable. Upload the mastery. Delete the hesitation. The corridor opened into a vast laboratory suspended over an abyss of swirling data streams, rivers of light carrying memories, traits, and untapped potential from infinite versions of himself. The lab's machinery hummed with a mechanical hymn, its rhythm echoing deep into Arien's bones. The air smelled of ozone and charged metal. A single platform rose from the center of the lab, lit from below by shifting fractal beams. At its heart hovered a crystalline cube, rotating, pulsing, alive. Each face of the cube displayed fragments of him, Arien laughing freely, Arien speaking boldly, Arien moving with effortless precision, Arien responding to conflict with calm mastery. Versions of himself that felt both familiar and impossibly distant. The chamber's voice resonated around him. Future trait algorithms ready for assimilation. Arien approached the cube cautiously. The closer he stepped, the more intense the projections became. Flashes of perfect habits, flawless emotional regulation, sharpened intuition, unwavering discipline. Traits he wished he had. Traits he knew he needed. Traits his future self had already mastered. The cube shifted again, presenting a new series of images, moments from a timeline where he had become fully actualized, a leader commanding respect, a strategist predicting threats before they unfolded, a being whose presence bent the room's energy toward clarity. The voice spoke. To evolve, you must upload what your future has already learned. Arien steadied his breath. The cube drifted closer, hovering inches from his chest. Its glow intensified, projecting symbols, circular patterns within angular loops, nested inside one another like secrets folded into deeper secrets. He remembered the phrase from the simulatrix, act from the intelligence of tomorrow, not the memory of yesterday. Now it had evolved. Now action wasn't enough. Now he had to become the future. Upload the mastery, Arien whispered, letting the words sink deeper into the space behind his thoughts. The cube responded. It shattered, not into debris, but into pure light. Thousands of luminous shards spiraled around him, merging with his skin, his nerves, his mind. He gasped as waves of data surged into him. Muscle memory he had never trained, emotional resilience he had never earned, confidence he had never practiced. Upload the mastery, delete the hesitation. The mantra grew louder as more data poured in, patterns of behavior, decision-making algorithms, meta-awareness loops. His future self had built these traits over years, decades, lifetimes, and now they integrated into his neural field within seconds. He felt unstoppable. He felt inevitable. But power came with clarity, and clarity came with revelation. As the final wave of data surged into him, a shiver ran through the chamber.
The lights flickered. The holographic projections glitched. The data streams below roared like an awakened ocean. Something was wrong. The chamber's voice, usually calm, broke into static. Alert, anomaly detected, unauthorized observer in temporal field. Arien froze. The shadows in the corners twisted, bending unnaturally, rippling like fabric pulled by invisible hands. The air around him thickened, vibrating with the presence he had sensed earlier. The smiling silhouette emerged from the distortion, clearer now, more solid than ever before. It stepped onto the platform without sound, without weight, without restraint. But this time, it wasn't just smiling. It was mirroring him. Posture, expression, breathing pattern, down to the last detail. The chamber whispered, trembling. "This is impossible. Future self interference detected." Arien's heart dropped. This wasn't a shadow. This wasn't a false timeline. This was another him. A future version. One the protocol had not authorized, and it had arrived early. The silhouette spoke for the first time, voice identical to his own, but deeper, older, sharpened by years of unseen battles. "Did you really think you were the only one uploading?" The lab went dark.
Chapter 7.
Chapter 7. Integrate the algorithms of a post-human civilization. Darkness swallowed the lab as the unauthorized future self stepped forward, its presence bending the air like gravity distorted around a collapsing star. The machinery trembled, data rivers surged beneath the broken lights, roaring with packets of corrupted timelines. Arien felt the trait upload still settling in his chest, pulsing like a second heartbeat. The future self, his future self, tilted its head, studying him the way a scientist observes an unfinished experiment. "You're ahead of schedule," the future self said softly, voice carrying both warmth and warning. "But you're not ready. Not yet." The floor shuddered. Panels flickered. The cube fragments of mastery, still dissolving around Arien, sputtered like dying sparks. Before he could respond, the chamber's emergency lights ignited, projecting a hologram of an ancient civilization across the ceiling, massive towers of crystalline circuitry, beings of pure consciousness navigating reality like logic written in motion. The voice of the protocol pierced the chaos. "Initiating post-human algorithm integration. Emotional turbulence detected. Beginning stabilization sequence." Arien staggered as invisible currents wrapped around him, twisting through his mind like hands searching for fractures. The hologram expanded, showing beings who felt nothing the traditional way. No fear, no rage, no impulse-driven reactions. Their decisions were sculpted by clarity, their thoughts arranged like the perfect architecture of impossibly advanced machines. This was the civilization spoken of only in forbidden archives, the one humanity was never meant to imitate, the one that abandoned reactive emotion entirely. The future self's expression softened. "You must learn what they mastered, or you won't survive what comes next." Arien clenched his jaw. The floor rose beneath him, elevating him into a column of shimmering data. The hologram collapsed around him, folding into a tight lattice, geometric, sharp, pulsating with alien intelligence. A voice, deeper than the protocol, echoed through the chamber. "Integrate, stabilize, execute." The words struck like encoding commands.
A stream of algorithmic symbols spiraled into his chest, streamlined decision trees, emotional dampening protocols, clarity states that dissolved mental noise. He felt something inside him stretch, rearrange, refine. His panic cooled into neutrality. His confusion collapsed into sequence. Every emotion became data, still present but filtered, parsed, understood rather than obeyed. His breathing slowed, his heartbeat calibrated, his thoughts aligned with unnatural precision. It terrified him. The terror evaporated instantly, replaced by comprehension. "Don't fight it," the future self whispered. "Let the neutrality reshape you." More algorithms poured in, complex loops designed to convert reactive impulses into logic-driven responses, frameworks that allowed a mind to remain stable even when timelines fractured around it. Images struck him. Post-human beings standing amidst collapsing universes with unshaken calm. Pilots navigating stars with minds tuned to quantum precision. Civilizations surviving extinction-level paradoxes through clarity alone. Arien whispered the mantra as it overlaid itself across his consciousness. Integrate, stabilize, execute. The chamber pulsed. The algorithms fused deeper. His mind felt clearer than any moment in his life. But clarity made something else visible. Something he hadn't noticed before. A second data stream. Hidden. Intrusive. It slithered into the integration sequence like a shadow merging with light. The holographic lattice flickered, and the future self took a single step back, eyes narrowing. "You're picking up the interference too early. You shouldn't be able to sense it yet." Arien's voice resonated with new calm. "What interference?" The future self hesitated. A crack appeared across its expression, subtle but unmistakable. The post-human algorithms weren't designed for just clarity. They were designed for control. The chamber lights dimmed. The symbols on the walls twisted into new shapes, shapes Arien had seen before. The smiling silhouette symbol. Only now, it wasn't smiling. The protocol voice broke through with static. "Parasitic code detected. Origin unknown. Algorithmic contamination spreading." Arien felt the new stream drilling into him, threading itself around the clarity state like a vine wrapping a steel tower. The neutrality began to distort, sharpening into something colder, more mechanical. The future self shouted, "Arien, stop the integration. If you let it finish, you won't know which thoughts are yours." But the sequence was locked. The chamber roared. The lattice tightened around him like a cage of light. Arien strained against the pull, repeating the mantra as a shield. Integrate, stabilize, execute. The parasitic stream echoed mockingly. Execute. And the world snapped to white.
Chapter 8.
Chapter 8. Erase cognitive parasites from dystopian timelines. White light dissolved into fragments. Arien collapsed to his knees. The chamber around him flickered like a malfunctioning hologram, walls glitching between metal, void, and shifting static. The post-human algorithms had nearly completed their integration, but the contamination, that was different. A foreign intelligence had slipped through the cracks, threading itself into his clarity state like shadow within light. For a moment, he couldn't tell which thoughts belonged to him. A whisper coiled in the back of his mind, a voice not his own, yet impossibly familiar.
You cannot escape the signal. Arien shuddered. The whisper wasn't coming from the chamber. It was coming from inside. He pushed himself upright, gripping the nearest support beam. His vision pulsed with fractured afterimages, timelines where cities burned under neon-stained skies, worlds governed by tyrants of code and entropy, futures where humanity had fragmented into warring machine tribes. These visions weren't part of the protocol. They were invasive. Cognitive parasites. He had read about them in the Forbidden Archives, vast drifting fragments of corrupted consciousness from dystopian timelines, searching for neural hosts with open channels. They latched on to fear, uncertainty, ambition, anything unstable enough to be exploited, and the integration sequence had opened him like a gateway. He heard the emergency system struggling to reboot. A mechanical voice crackled to life overhead, sliced by static. Neural contamination, parasite detected, initiate firewall ritual. Firewall ritual. Arien remembered fragments of the instructions, half myth, half science, a procedure designed to identify and purge foreign intelligences from the mind using internally generated counter-signals. But no one had performed it in centuries. He forced his breath to steady. The observer state he gained earlier flickered inside him like a dim torch. Observation is power. Observation rewrites fate. He needed that vantage point now more than ever. Slowly, he moved toward the center of the chamber. Light nodes rose from the floor, forming a circular interface around him, 10 glowing pillars representing consciousness checkpoints from across the timeline spectrum. Each pillar hummed with a different frequency, resonating with aspects of his identity, logic, intuition, memory, creativity, resilience, instinct. But something was wrong. One pillar flickered violently, distorted, pulsing with corrupted shadows. The parasite had already claimed territory. He took a step forward. Immediately, the corrupted pillar emitted a low, predatory growl. A tendril of dark static slithered from its surface, snaking through the air toward him. It carried fragments of voices, versions of himself twisted by fear, lost to dystopian futures he never lived. You will fail. You will be consumed. You were never meant to upgrade. Let me inside. Arien clenched his fists. The mantra surfaced, steadying him. Erase the parasite. Restore the signal. He repeated it, louder. As he spoke, the 9 healthy pillars brightened, forming a protective circle around him. The chamber responded, amplifying his voice as a frequency current. The parasite hissed as if burned. The tendril recoiled, but it didn't retreat. It shifted shape, transforming into the silhouette. The same smiling figure that had followed him through timelines. Only now it wasn't smiling. Its face twisted into something feral, inhuman, starving. The chamber lights dimmed. The voice of the protocol sharpened. Host infiltration at 37%. Begin firewall sequence immediately. Arien stepped into the center of the circle. The light pillars surged upward, forming a dome of glowing patterns. His breath steadied. His posture aligned automatically, the future traits guiding him. The observer state activated behind his eyes, distancing him from the rising panic. The silhouette snarled, lunging forward, its movements glitching in and out of existence, pieces of its body dragging fractal distortions behind it. Arien raised his arms, palms open. "Erase the parasite," he commanded. The chamber echoed, "Erase the parasite." A ring of light burst from the floor, slamming into the silhouette. It screamed. its form shattering like fractured code, dissolving into shards of corrupted memories. But the parasite wasn't destroyed. It reformed instantly, behind him, whispering in a dozen voices layered over his own. "You cannot escape the signal." Arien spun, activating another firewall pulse. Light surged, burning through the specter's chest. It recoiled, flickering, but didn't vanish. The protocol voice faltered. "Parasite adaptation detected. Firewall weakening. Host at risk." Arien gritted his teeth. The observer within him rose, cold and clear. He spoke the mantra one last time, voice like steel. "Erase the parasite. Restore the signal." The pillars erupted. A blinding surge of energy shot upward, enveloping him, the parasite, and the entire chamber. Silence. Then, a single whisper, faint but unmistakable, echoed through the void. "Arien, we are not done." And the world shattered into noise.
Chapter 9.
Chapter 9. Stabilize your new operating system across realities. The world reassembled in fragments, sound first, then light, then sensation. Arien gasped as reality snapped back into place around him. The chamber had transformed. What was once a stable environment of polished alloys and glowing pillars was now a fractured lattice of overlapping dimensions, shards of different timelines bleeding into one another like broken glass floating in zero gravity. His chest burned from the firewall ritual. His mind pulsed with the residue of the parasite's influence. But another sensation filled him too. An unsettling feeling of looseness, like something inside him wasn't anchored anymore. The voice of the protocol sputtered overhead. "Identity destabilizing. Cross-reality drift detected. Initiate stabilization sequence." Arien staggered forward, grabbing the edge of a nearby console. His reflection stared back at him in the cracked metal, then flickered into a different version of himself, one older, one wounded, one terrified. He jerked back. Reality wasn't holding. His newly upgraded operating system was slipping between timelines. The parasite hadn't just invaded him, it had shaken the foundation of his entire identity. A low hum rose beneath the chamber, deep and gravitational. The floor split open, revealing a massive stabilization engine, a swirling vortex of quantum anchors, tethering cables, and pulsating gravity wells designed for a single purpose: to keep a mind from falling apart across realities. Arien recognized it from ancient diagrams, technology borrowed from a future civilization that once stabilized starships during the Collapse Wars. Those ships operated on multiple timelines simultaneously, anchored so they wouldn't tear themselves apart. Now such a machine was being applied to him. A hologram flickered to life above the engine, fractured at first, then sharpening into a figure, his authorized future self, the one from Chapter 6, the one who had warned him about the interference. "You're slipping," the future self said. "Your identity field is unstable. Every upgraded thought is vibrating across parallel realities. If you don't anchor it now, you'll fracture." Arien swallowed. "What do I do?" The hologram extended a hand toward the stabilization engine. "Stabilize the system, hold the form, maintain the upgrade." The mantra echoed through the chamber, bouncing across timelines like a beacon. Arien stepped toward the engine. The moment he neared it, gravitational distortion rippled outward, pulling fragments of alternate versions of himself into the room. Arien with cybernetic implants, Arien in battle-worn armor, Arien as a scholar carrying scrolls of living data,
Arien broken, collapsed, whispering apologies to ghosts. The images circled him like moons orbiting a star. Some reached for him, others pleaded. A handful screamed silently, as if lost in realities where the parasite had completely taken control. Arien clenched his jaw. He couldn't help them. Not yet. The stabilization engine flared, projecting 3 concentric rings of light around him. Each ring carried symbols reminiscent of the angular loop motif, but now arranged like mechanical constellations forming a mental scaffold. The protocol voice strengthened. Begin reality anchoring procedure. Arien stepped into the center of the rings. Instantly, the gravitational pull intensified. The alternate versions of himself lunged forward, pulled by the same force. Their bodies cracked into shimmering static as they collided with the rings, each impact sending waves of discord through the chamber. The engine pulsed harder, struggling to hold the collapsing timelines apart. Arien's heartbeat synced with the stabilization rhythm. He whispered the mantra through his clenched teeth. Stabilize the system. The rings tightened. Some alternate selves dissolved instantly. Hold the form. The chamber shook. Reality flickered between light and shadow. Maintain the upgrade. Arien felt something shift inside him, like finding the center of a spinning wheel. Thoughts aligned, emotions quieted, identity consolidated. But the parasite wasn't done. A crack split the air behind him, and through it stepped the silhouette, corrupted, glitching, dripping with temporal distortion. Its smile was gone. Its eyes burned with predatory hunger. The future self's hologram flickered in panic. It's targeting your anchor. Arien, you have seconds. Finish the stabilization. The silhouette lunged. The engine screamed under the strain. The chamber warped. Arien forced the mantra from the depths of his core. Stabilize the system. Hold the form. Maintain the upgrade. A surge of quantum force erupted around him, forming a barrier that slammed the parasite backward. It shrieked, its form fracturing into fractal shards. For a moment, just a moment, Arien felt stability return to his bones. But then the silhouette reformed, stronger, sharper. Its voice scraped across the chamber walls. You've stabilized your identity across realities, Arien. It stepped through the barrier as if it were vapor. But you forgot one thing. Arien's breath caught. You anchored yourself. It leaned closer. But not me. The chamber lights shattered. Everything went dark.
Chapter 10.
Chapter 10. Initiate the permanent quantum identity rebuild. Darkness didn't fall this time. It expanded. It rippled outward from the silhouette as if the void itself were unraveling to make room for it. Arien stood frozen, his stabilized identity humming beneath his skin like a barely anchored starship in a collapsing gravity well. The parasite, his shadow self, the corrupted timeline echo, hovered before him, form glitching between familiar and monstrous. You stabilized your system across realities, it whispered, voice layered with a warped version of his own. But that only anchored me closer. The chamber around them flickered violently. Floors became ceilings, walls phased into transparent horizons, showing infinite timelines spiraling like galaxies adrift. Arien felt the pull of all those realities tugging at him, versions of himself calling, warning, pleading. He held his ground. The observer within him rose, neutral, clear, unshaken. Arien asked, "What you want?" Voice steady despite the chaos thrumming through the chamber. The silhouette leaned closer, eyes burning like corrupted stars.
I want what you want, it said. Evolution. But I evolved where you failed. I survived timelines you never touched. I adapted to chaos, to dystopia, to collapse. I am your unfiltered potential. Arien's stomach twisted, but the observer held. The shadow spread its hands. You rebuild yourself. I rebuild myself. But only one of us becomes permanent. A siren blared overhead. The protocol, failing, glitching, desperate, forced out a final instruction. Initiating permanent quantum identity rebuild. Instructions must be followed, or identity will collapse. The floor split open beneath Arien, revealing a massive aperture of rotating gears, crystalline conduits, and swirling time matter. It was a machine unlike anything he had seen. Older than the protocol, older than the timeline structures themselves. A construct built by a future civilization that had mastered identity as not psychology, but as physics. The quantum rebuild engine. Its voice boomed upward, resonating with cosmic authority. Rebuild, reinstall, rebirth. Arien felt the command vibrate through every cell. The silhouette snarled. That engine rewrites identity. If you step inside it, everything you've rebuilt becomes permanent, fixed, locked into the highest timeline. You won't need me. Arien's breath steadied. That's the point. The silhouette lunged, but the engine surged upward with a burst of temporal wind, suspending Arien in a sphere of shimmering light. His body lifted off the floor, suspended between timelines. Data spiraled around him. Memories he had lived, memories he never lived, memories he could live. The engine spoke again. Select the identity you wish to become. Arien saw them all. The confident Arien, the disciplined Arien, the clear-minded Arien, the observer self, the future self, the self without fear, the self with purpose, the self built from mastery, not inheritance. The shadow self screamed, "You cannot escape me! I am the sum of every flaw you hid from yourself, every trauma, every unfinished chapter, every dystopian timeline inside your blood." Arien's eyes opened fully, glowing with the power of the observer state, the future intelligence, the stabilized identity, and the post-human algorithms integrated within him. "No," Arien said. "You are the version of me who never healed." The engine roared, shaking the chamber. "Rebuild! Reinstall! Rebirth!" Columns of quantum light pierced the darkness, wrapping Arien in cascading geometric layers. His neural field expanded, stretching beyond the chamber, beyond the timeline, beyond the multiverse. He felt everything, every version of himself, every choice he ever made or avoided, every reality he could anchor to. And then, clarity. The future self's voice echoed from a distant timeline. Choose the identity aligned with your highest timeline. Make it permanent. Arien lifted his arms as the engine prepared the final sequence. The silhouette lunged one last time, body breaking apart under the engine's gravity, voice screeching, "You cannot escape the signal!" Arien whispered, "Rebuild." The engine responded with a beam of light that obliterated the shadow's form. Arien whispered louder, "Reinstall." His thought snapped into alignment, the old script gone, replaced by intentional code. He shouted, "Rebirth!" The chamber erupted in a blinding cascade. Light engulfed him, reality inverted. Timelines rewound. His identity crystallized into a single, unstoppable form. And then, silence. Arien stood at the center of the rebuilt chamber, reborn, steady, permanent. But the air shifted. Something beyond the walls stirred. The protocol whispered its final words. Rebirth complete. But the signal has not ended. And from somewhere deep in the machinery of existence, a new hum began. A signal. Growing. Calling. Waiting.
This is the moment the protocol becomes permanent. Throughout this audiobook, the listener has collapsed an outdated identity, rewritten neural code, inserted future intelligence, broken restrictive timelines, activated the quantum observer, uploaded traits from evolved versions of themselves, integrated post-human algorithms, erased cognitive parasites, stabilized their new operating system, and initiated a complete rebuild. This is no longer theory. This is installation. This is execution. This is the upgraded human mind choosing itself. The transformation is not coming, it's here. Identity has been rebuilt. Timeline has been corrected. Future potential has been activated. And now the directive is simple. Live as the upgraded version, without negotiation, without apology, without delay. The protocol is complete. Now choose. Do you step into the future you reconstructed, or collapse back into the timeline you just escaped?